Today's bizarre story takes us to London, Kentucky, where a police officer kills a man over a weed eater. Now, this man right here is David Westerfield. He's a Laurel County judge executive. So, when something went missing at his property in London, Kentucky, right behind the Slim Chicken, you know somebody had to die over it because he's a big wig. And how dare some stupid hillbilly steal from somebody that's powerful in Kentucky like a judge executive? Now, despite the fact the suspect had already been apprehended in a nearby hick town of Manchester, Kentucky, this bad man right here is Hobart Buttery, who is accused of stealing the freaking weed eater. Apparently, he came down to London, Kentucky and decided to steal a weed eater from what he thought was an ex-employer. Now, despite the fact that the man was already in custody, as is habitual for law enforcement in Kentucky, they had to recover the freaking weed eater, even if it meant that somebody had to die over it. Because, of course, in Kentucky, law enforcement will kill you over a freaking weed eater. It wasn't just anybody's weed eater, it was a judge executive's weed eater. And by the way, it wasn't his. He says, I was just letting somebody leave it out there. It wasn't even mine. So now law enforcement decided to get a search warrant on a property at midnight. Yes, at midnight. They're going to break down the door in a mobile home park to find this so-called weed eater that was stolen from some judge executive's house behind the Slim Chicken. Now keep in mind that way up in the mountains, the suspect is already apprehended, and he already apparently admitted to stealing the freaking weed eater. So he's way the crap in the mountains in a trailer park. So the weed whacker disappears where the X is in London, Kentucky, right behind the Slim's freaking Chicken. And then he runs all the way up to the mountains east where the arrow points to the town of Manchester. But somehow law enforcement thinks that the stash house is south of London in a place called Lily. So they go to a trailer park there where they think they're going to find the stolen goodies. Now, normally if you steal something in the Kentucky mountains, law enforcement will do very little about it. However, this wasn't just anybody's weed eater. This was a judge executive's weed eater. So they decided the most logical thing to do would be to get a search warrant at midnight and kick down the door of a mobile home where they were going to find the stolen weed eater. So at around midnight, law enforcement shows up to this raggedy trailer park and they kick down the door of a trailer, certain that they're going to find meth and, of course, the freaking weed eater that was stolen from the judge executive. But what they found was that they had kicked down the wrong trailer door and there was a man sitting on a couch with a weapon, allegedly. A man who was killed by law enforcement in the wrong freaking trailer. Now, if we back up for a minute, imagine how much corruption has to exist in these Kentucky towns when law enforcement, after apprehending the suspect, decides that they're going to send cops to a trailer park at midnight with a search warrant to recover a weed eater for a freaking judge. Now, what's absolutely insane is that Mr. Hobart Buttery says that he ain't snitching. He didn't tell them where this stuff was. Law enforcement somehow assumed that this trailer park in the mountains of Kentucky is where their stolen property was, and they were able to get a warrant. And when the cops went in, they didn't even hit the right trailer. They hit the wrong one. And then, despite the fact they weren't even in the right trailer park, in the wrong holler, in the wrong trailer park, decided to take out the homeowner who had apparently nothing to do with the situation. However, many people in the hollers of Kentucky are rumoring that this individual wasn't an accidental casualty of the wrong search warrant, but in fact, there had to be a motive to get rid of this person. And well, they're trying to clean their hands with Mr. Buttery for stealing a weed eater. When we look at the characters involved in this situation, it's sad to say that the most trustworthy person here is the guy that stole the weed eater, who claims that he didn't snitch on this guy. He didn't say where this stuff was. He even went on an interview saying, hey man, I ain't put toe to toe down there, man. Ain't got nothing toe to toe, man. He's just like, nope, I ain't snitching. I ain't telling y'all where this weed eater is, and I'm gonna go to death with this secret of what happened to the stolen weed eater. But he seems like he ain't saying where the weed eater is, and somebody's gotta die over this dang weed eater. Now, the Laurel County Correctional website doesn't list Mr. Buttery as an inmate or that he's ever existed in their system, but their website does prompt you to confirm you're not a robot roughly around every 30 seconds, which makes navigating their inmate list a literal impossible nightmare. Now, the question most of us would ask is, why would you get a search warrant for a stolen weed eater if you already have the suspect in custody and you already have video footage of him stealing the weed eater? Why would you issue a search warrant? Oh, I know why. Because you're dealing with a judge, executive in some hick town in Kentucky. But in the absolute demonstration of absolute power and police sovereignty over this county in Kentucky, these individuals did the unthinkable, pulling a search warrant for a weed eater, doing the search warrant at midnight, leading to the death of somebody in an address that wasn't even the right place. This story really illustrates to us, those who are looking for affordable living in the United States right now, why you can't just get up and move to some hick town in Kentucky because it's affordable. These people are dangerous. They do whatever they want all the time. The only reason we're hearing about this story is because a police officer killed somebody during a search warrant. But this should just give you an indication to how these people move. These people have absolute power. And if you move to one of these little hick towns in Kentucky or one of these places up there like that in them hollers, those people do whatever they want. They're absolute brutes. And when it comes to their people, they have no problem doing whatever they want. And this is why I tell you guys on my channel, you can't just move to these rural communities. In these rural communities, these people do whatever they want. And I can guarantee you there's a bunch of stuff going on in the background of this story that we may never know because the people involved are powerful. But at the end of the day, a door was kicked down in a trailer. It wasn't even the right trailer, or maybe it was the right trailer. Who knows what the real motives and intentions were here? The problem being that in these small towns in Kentucky, when it comes to judges and police officers and anybody who's got power, these people do whatever they want and everybody else is disposable. Why they decided to go to the next town over and kick down a door in a trailer when the suspect wasn't even in that town, who the crap knows. But at the end of the day, you can see that these individuals are even able to pull a warrant on something that doesn't even warrant a warrant, if that is a thing you could say. And that's why I tell you guys, you can't move to some hick town in a holler simply because it's affordable. Your life in these types of rural communities is worth nothing. It's worth less than a weed eater. I can guarantee you in most police agencies, they would not pull a midnight search warrant over a weed eater. It's just too dangerous. But it highlights again that in states like Kentucky, your life is worth absolutely nothing. Let me give you some analytics on how little your life is worth in the state of Kentucky. So this isn't just my opinion. These are real analytical numbers. So a lawyer firm did a study on back and spinal injuries by state. They found that in the state of California, the average person who is injured in California is receiving 1.7 million, but the median is about 1.5 million. The highest amount paid was to somebody that was injured by a California highway trooper. In comparison, the median in Kentucky is a mere $125,000. In other words, how little your life is worth in the state of Kentucky is so bad that it can actually be tracked with settlements related to injuries and deaths in the state. If you get hurt in Kentucky, you are worth nothing. You ever wonder why the overdose death rates and the homicide rates are so low in California and why their life expectancy is so high? Because you can't just kill people in California without being severely punished for it. But here in Kentucky, if somebody hurts you, your life is completely worth nothing. And I'm pretty sure that this police officer, whoever is responsible for killing this innocent person, will likely not have to pay for their crime because, after all, in Kentucky, your life is worth nothing. It's analytically proven. We can see by settlements given in the courtrooms of the state of Kentucky that the courts in Kentucky, a person in Kentucky is worth a tenth of what a person in California is worth. And that should just give you an idea of how much liability or responsibility these agencies are going to take for the fact that they killed an innocent person while trying to find a judge's weed eater. Because as far as they're concerned, that weed eater was worth more than somebody's life. And this negligent, reckless lack of respect for human life and the value of human life is the way many of these states like Kentucky function. These are places where, once again, like I said, your life is worth absolutely nothing. So if you want to try your luck in a place like Kentucky because it's affordable, you'll find out that you're affordable too. You ever wonder why a rural property in California is worth about 10 times more than a rural property in Kentucky? Because your life in California is worth 10 times more than it is in Kentucky. And this is a real figure. This is what big corporations have to pay when they hurt somebody neglectfully. These are the prices that the courts are paying for people's lives and injuries. The overdose death rate in Kentucky is more than 2 times higher than in California. So as we can see, your life is worth nothing when you move to states that are affordable. So when you're looking at moving somewhere and you find this rural place in Kentucky that's affordable, there's a reason why it ain't worth crap, because you ain't worth crap the moment you put yourself there. So to the people that are worrying about moving somewhere more affordable because they can't afford the cost of living, well, one of these little backwoods town may be able to afford to eliminate you because you're not really worth that much there. And sadly, the truth about the value of life in these places like rural Kentucky is that if the life of people here, let's say of African Americans or minorities, was worth into the millions of dollars, these law enforcement agencies would be out there protecting those people to make sure that nobody could get a mill off one of their family members. And that's really the reality of the price of life. When your life is worth nothing, you're disposable. But when your life is worth millions, even the people that don't like you are going to make sure you don't get hurt because they don't want to pay your family that kind of money, because that's generational wealth. And that's the reality of Kentucky. In a state where life is so cheap and so affordable, it's not a big deal for somebody to get crossed out over a weed eater. Now, I've heard some wild stories over the years of crazy things happening, but this story has to take the cake. And it just illustrates to you how in the United States, particularly in small rural communities, people with power do whatever the crap they want to. The judges, the cops, they're all friends, they're all on the same team, and if you mess with one, everybody can go after you, and who's going to protect you? In the case of this situation, it just kind of goes to illustrate as well that you have to be very careful where you move your family, because if you move to one of these places that doesn't value life, you could just be a random casualty by accident. And that's also something that I've emphasized on my channel quite a bit. When it comes to picking a place to live, you got to be very careful, because in some places, your life is completely disposable. In some of these counties in eastern Kentucky, the overdose death rate is over 100 per 100,000. That means you're more likely to die from an overdose in eastern Kentucky in some of these counties than you are to be killed in Tijuana, Mexico. That should just give you an idea how bad things are out here. Life is just completely worthless. The types of jobs that people have to do to survive in eastern Kentucky are dangerous lines of work. And that's why these industries have made sure that life is worth nothing, because the industries that they have in these places are dangerous industries, and they don't want to have to pay too much money when somebody accidentally gets crossed out. And I guess that carries into law enforcement as well. It's a state where even this case, if they were to give a compensation to somebody, when this case does have to get resolved, if they're even going to resolve it, because they may just say, hey, it was an accident, it's not our fault. But even if these law enforcement agencies were to give a compensation to the family members of these people, how much do you think the life of somebody in a trailer in Kentucky is worth? $50,000, $40,000? It certainly isn't going to be into the millions, not in the state of Kentucky. If this had happened in California, I mean, not that it would, but if it had happened in California, you'd be talking millions of dollars. An off-duty officer in California killed somebody with a DUI. It wasn't even intentional. The guy was off-duty, but he killed somebody. And, well, did he kill the person? Let's read this article. The highest settlement in California was $3.5 million for a man and his two sons that were involved in a multi-vehicle accident that left them with severe injuries to the spine. So nobody was killed, it was just injuries to the spine. Severe, that's bad. The accident was caused by an off-duty California Highway Patrol driving under the influence, leaving a party. So which of these two cases do you think is more neglectful? Well, without a doubt, an on-duty police officer breaking into the wrong house and hurting somebody in the middle of the night because he had the wrong address during a search warrant over a weed eater sounds considerably more unnecessary, more uncommon, and more neglectful. It's definitely a bizarre case. Do you really think these people in Kentucky are going to get $3.5 million for this person's life? If they get a few $100,000, they'll be lucky. But it just goes to show that in the state of Kentucky, life is worthless. And I would see that I'm doing this video just so that you guys in Kentucky who are going to be on this jury, if it's even going to get to that point, because knowing Kentucky, it probably won't. But if there's ever a jury, if there's ever people sitting in a cafe in Kentucky talking about this case, what do you guys think this guy's life is worth? A guy in a trailer in Kentucky, a few $100,000, they can clean their hands and be over with it. No big deal. That's what 2 police cruisers cost. You can just say, okay, won't be buying 2 new police cruisers this year. I mean, that's what these Yukons, these brand new Yukons are $80,000 a piece, right? So, okay, the cost of 3 or 4 brand new police cruisers, that's what a human's life is worth in Kentucky. In the state of California, it's into the millions of dollars. That's enough for people to lose their freaking jobs. That's enough for, it's a big number. But that's why these type of things don't happen in California. So what I'm trying to teach the people of Kentucky is understand how much a life is worth in your state. Because in this case, I would love to see in the future if there's even a settlement. But if there is a settlement, what miserable amount of money are they going to give you for somebody's life? Because these bigwigs, as you guys like to call them in the South, are able to do whatever the crap they want. But when they have a little mishap like this one, your life is worth nothing. If your life was worth more, they wouldn't be making these types of mistakes. And sadly, the state of Kentucky has the reputation for the people there being more likely to side with a big corporation or a law enforcement agency over their own people. And this is really stemming from, of course, large corporations preaching the narrative to people that they can't give out large settlements, that they can't do that because that's not right. But is it more right to hurt somebody? Is it more right to kill somebody? You know, it just raises a lot of questions. And one of the most bizarre things that I feel like is kind of the biggest question mark in the mindset of people in Eastern Kentucky is when situations like this happen, that juries will, they'll be like, okay, $100,000, well, there you go. That's what your life is worth. But, these big corporations are the ones that are behind all of these ideas. This isn't from the people. I mean, you're worth the value that you give yourself. And I think in this case, a lot of people are just going to say, well, it's just another group of criminals versus law enforcement agencies. There's no value in this. And that's probably what these people are going to think in this small town. But I want them to really think hard. Think hard. If it really was a mistake, I know a lot of you guys don't think it was a mistake. You guys think there's another story behind this, and I wouldn't blame you for thinking that, knowing it's Kentucky. But if it was a mistake and it just hit up the wrong house and hit the wrong person up, what's that worth in Kentucky? Interesting question. It'd be worth more somewhere else. I recently, about a year ago, got hurt in a rural county in North Florida. And literally I had to listen to the lawyers tell me that in this rural county, most likely the people in a jury would side with the big corporation blindly over a Hispanic person, for example, myself. And it really destroyed the value of my case, because who the crap in this rural county in North Florida is going to side with a Hispanic that got hurt at a big corporation. They're going to side with the big corporation because to them, your life is worth nothing. And this is also a lesson for people who travel across the United States. You know, you might go on a cross-country road trip and go to West Virginia, Kentucky, and Alabama and go to all these little backwoods places, not really knowing the danger you're in, or if something were to happen to you, how easily these people will wash their hands, leave you dead or in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, and not have to pay you anything for what they did. And you don't really think about that when you travel. You travel and go places, and the last thing in your mind is, what if I get hit by a semi-truck right now? What state am I in? Well, this state right here thinks your leg is worth $10,000. I would be careful not to get on the roads if that's the case. But people don't really look at traveling that way. You should really be careful where you travel. In my case, you know, I've been to dangerous places all over the country. I go inside of homeless camps and interview people on the streets, and I'm always doing dangerous content. Yet, I didn't get hurt in a homeless camp. I didn't get hurt in a bad neighborhood. I got hurt in a large hotel by the beach, and to listen to a lawyer tell me that a Hispanic person's back is worth nothing in a rural county in North Florida, it hurts. But it's the reality of the mindset of people in the United States who somehow side with law enforcement agencies or big corporations over other human beings. And well, it'll be interesting to see if it even gets to the point where this law enforcement agency will make it right with the victim's family. But even if they do, to what degree? To the degree that California would pay? Very unlikely. And to the people that say Kentucky is better than California, please tell me in what way? Safety, homicide rates, incomes, education, life expectancy. Tell me in what category. Be specific. Here, we have higher this. Tell me what, how. Don't just tell me, well, you'd have to be out of your mind to compare Kentucky to California. Everybody knows Kentucky's Kentucky. Okay, well, life expectancy, homicide rate, overdose rate. Just tell me in what category is Kentucky better off than California? I'd love to hear it. Well, Jose, there's more homeless people in California than there are in Kentucky. Yes, and if you offered people in California that they could have a free trailer in the side of a holler in Kentucky, 99.9% of them would say, I'd rather stay here on the sidewalk. So, no, that doesn't count. Well, I don't know if you know this. There's a YouTuber that actually interviews the people that live there. I think it's called the Soft White Underbelly. And I was watching some of their interviews, and every other person that was there sleeping in the sidewalks in Los Angeles is either from Kentucky, Nebraska, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. Like, them people are not from Los Angeles. Those people are all coming from some small hick town that if they were trying to live homeless there, they would disappear. So that's that too as well. Would you consider moving to some small hick town in Kentucky just for affordability, knowing all the dangers that come with it? I would love to hear your comments. Get down there, get involved. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and a big hug and salute to all the people in Kentucky. I know here in Bradenton, Florida, we call it Bradentucky, and there's a lot of people from Kentucky here in Bradenton. A lot of them are homeless on the streets. And when they tell me their stories, they tell me that in Kentucky, they were getting hurt in the coal mines. Everybody they knew was dying from overdoses, and they just came to Florida for something better, but they were never able to afford the livelihood here in Florida, the expensive cost of living. They come to the conclusion that people in Florida work way too hard, and they're just not used to working as hard as we do here in Florida. But that's the thing. If you want something better, you really have to work for it. And a lot of times people that grow up in these places, they're content here. They're very comfortable. The people who live here in these places, they're comfortable. Their houses are paid off. Their cars are paid off. The chicken's $5 a bucket down there or something like that. It's very affordable. Kentucky Fried Chicken, it's affordable chicken. It's affordable everything. But then your life is too. So it's one of those deals where like people that are from these places, they get comfortable. You know, their house, land, they got some land, they got their houses. And for them, corruption and dealing with law enforcement and people like that, they grew up around that. They're desensitized to it. But most of us that have grown up around decent people in the city, if we ended up in one of these scenarios where they kick down your door and kill somebody because it's the wrong person or because who knows what the crap really happened here, right? And most of us wouldn't want to be living in a place where at any moment somebody, just because they have that much power, can do whatever they want. That's why a lot of us continue to work hard to live in our cities, despite the cost of living being tremendously expensive. I don't have to worry about the cops kicking down my door by mistake or looking for somebody's stolen weed eater because they're a judge's buddy or something. That's crazy. All right, shout outs to everybody in Louisville and Lexington, the larger cities in Kentucky. Any subscriber of ours watching from Kentucky. I personally lived in Kentucky. My wife's got family in Kentucky. It's a beautiful state with beautiful natural scenery. We were just in Kentucky not that long ago, and we had a great time exploring like rural towns and stuff like that. But living in those places is a whole different package. It's a beautiful place. Kentucky really is beautiful from one end to the other. It's a beautiful state, but living there comes with some unique complications that you're just not going to have in other states. The bluegrass state, Kentucky.